Klondike Rush is a game that I picked up at Gen Con 2017, 2 to 4 players. I saw it demoed there, it seemed interesting, it looked good, just visually, the components, and so I decided I wanted to give it a try. I filmed the demo at Gen Con and now you have the full video. It is a game set during the gold rush in the Klondike, in the late 19th century, in the Klondike. Who would have imagined it from the title? Big plot twist. 2 to 4 players, as I said. It's a competitive game and it's based on bidding. That is by far the main mechanic, with also set collection and a couple of other things, but those are the main elements. Let me show how the game works, and then we're going to talk about the game in general and the conclusions of this video. This is a general view of the board of the game, very good looking, very thematic, and here you see a net of connections that represent the playable area of the game. There is a pool of tokens representing resources that the players may acquire during the game: salmon, gems, moose, information, I guess, sightings of the abominable snowman that you see there. At the beginning of the game, you shuffle all these tokens together and then you randomly place them on these circles on the board like that, so that there will be one in each location. I'm not gonna do that right now because that's how I roll. You also have this token here that represents the initial camp. You place it on any one location on the board. If you place it in a central location such as that one, you will have an easier game. If you place it a little more in an isolated place, you will have a harder game. Wherever you place it, then you place also 4 initial mines, so 1 per color. These mines look really neat, really cute, and they are, of course, very important. It's a game where you buy stocks of different companies, so these pieces don't represent the players. It's not like, oh, I have green and you have blue. You will have an influence in these 4 companies, and that may change as the game progresses. Also, so pretty much this is setup. You place all these tokens and you decide where the starting placement is, where the initial settlement. Then the players are gonna get cards from this deck. These represent orders. As you probably imagine during the game, if you acquire the right number and type of resource and you have a card with that resource, then you can discard the corresponding resources, like here, 2 gems, to fulfill the order. You flip it face up, you get that amount of money, and you also keep the card face up in your play area to show that you completed that order, and because that will score your points at the end of the game. Speaking of money, money is represented by these cards here, $1, different denominations. They're playable, they are efficient, they're not the best money that there is out there, but they definitely beat paper money by a light year. You know, there aren't many games that really have money options that look great. They are perfectly efficient. These cards representing money do a job that is good enough. Then, so play will also start with a capital, so play will start with some cards of this type, order cards, with $30, and also there will be this deck of cards which really represent the main engine in the game. This deck is shuffled, and then, well, you're ready to start. During a turn, the active player flips a card from this deck face up. Also, we're gonna have an active player marker, which is represented by the abominable Yeti here, probably one of the most overproduced active player markers I've seen. And so the active player flips a card from that deck face up, and that becomes the available card the players will fight for this round. Players, starting with the active player, simply bid. Active player announces, I'm gonna bid $2. Other players may pass or may bid more. There's only one chance for each player to bid, so it doesn't go around and around, which is important because each round you're gonna bid for a card, so there's gonna be these many options in the game. If you went around until players are exhausted, the game will last forever. It would be absolutely a pain to play. So you get a single chance to bid, and then the card is assigned. These cards represent different companies, the 4 different companies, but really what differentiates them is what indicates is the color in which the name of the company is written. So basically this is the light blue company, although you have see a dominant white here, and this is like some sort of like gray color. This is the red company. This is the yellow company, although this doesn't look yellow at all, definitely very orange, and this is the green company. Once you realize that the color at the bottom is also the color that is mostly represented in the card, it gets a little easier. But at the beginning, it took us a while to figure out which card was which. I don't know, it just didn't seem to be the most efficient way of coding the companies. Also, coding by color, always not particularly friendly to people with color recognition challenges. Would have been better to, for example, to have different sculpts. I don't know. In any case, there will be a card available. People will bid for it. Somebody will take that card. And then we look at the bottom, which tells, again, this tells us what kind of like stock, which company this acts as a stock for. And then here we have the advantages. If there is that symbol there, you take a mine from the general supply and you place it on the card. If there is a crate there, then you will draw from the order deck. So more chances of selling stuff later. And these symbols here are contracts, and the more you have, the more you will gain from the company which you have them. Most have a single contract per card, some have 2. So you may get a mine, you may get something. In any case, after you gain a card, you put it in your play area. And as you acquire more cards, probably you will want to organize them by type. Like, for example, if I have a red card here, and then I gain another red card, then so I know at a glance how many contracts I have in a certain company, because after you have taken your mines and your mines and your cards, this is what matters, how much investment you have in a certain company. After the bid, after the auction, the active player has the opportunity of building mines that they may have in their play area. This is regardless who got the card. Maybe the active player did not get the card that was available, but the active player has some mines from previous rounds, and then the active player can build these mines. To build the mines, you place them on a board on one of the available connections. Remember, these connections will have tokens on them. To build a mine, you need to pay the cost between the location in which you're placing the mine and the closest mine of the same color. So, for example, right now, this would cost me $2. I pay $2 to the bank. I also take the token of the location in which I am building a mine, and I place it in my personal area. So, for example, suppose then I build this one, and again, it costs me only 2. And then maybe I want to build I'm going to build a yellow one, and I'm going to place it here. Now I have to pay the cost between the location and the yellow one that is there. However, when you're paying the cost of a connection that has 2 mines on both sides, that have a mine on each of the sides of that connection, regardless of the color, the cost of that connection is reduced to 1. So that means that since this one has 2 mines, kind of like surround the connection, this costs 1. Same here, this costs 1. I'm placing this one here, and this one costs me 1 just because it is 1. But then if I'm gonna put this one here, it's gonna be 1, 1, 1, and 2. I don't know, maybe I should look at that side, maybe it will cost less. This one will cost me 2, 1, and 3 because there are no mines. So I will still be able to create a connection with green, but there are no mines here that reduce the cost. And so this is how you place mines on the board. That will cost you money. And well, at some point your money will be reduced because you get some money from these cards, but not much. When to get a card will cost you maybe $4 or $5. To build it will cost you $4 or $5. This is not gonna change all that much. Luckily enough, each player has a profit card, a single profit card that can be played once per game. So when you play it, it's incredibly important. It may just be the single most important decision in the game. You play this card, it is removed, and what happens then is that you are gonna cash in the value of all of your properties, of all of your stock. When you put a mine on the board, you also increase the value of that mine. That is, every time that you put a mine on the board, you move a token representing the value on that track. So right now, the green company is worth 1 because it has a single mine on the board. Yellow company is worth 2, and if I build another yellow one, I move this one by 1, and blue only has 1 on the board. So the value will change. The more mines are on the board, the more is the value. Oh, look at that, green has 2. The more is the value of the company. When I play my profit card, I gain the value of the company for which I have a contract. I get that value for each contract that I have. So right now I'm going to score the value of red twice because I have 2 contracts. So I'm going to cash $6 because of that. And supposing my play area also have a single white, then I'm gonna get $1 because of that, and so on and so forth. So each contract will score you the value of the company for that at that point. So you went down to like, $2 or $3. You were starving, and then you play this at the right time. You get $30, $40, $50. Then you're back in the game and you're back to invest a lot. The game continues like this, bidding, building mines, occasionally cashing in, collecting sets, and then also completing orders to cash in the sets. Continues like this until the end of the deck. When the last card has been assigned, there is a last round in which there are no cards anymore, but players can build mines that they still have in their area and they haven't built yet. And then you have the final scoring. The final scoring, you get, again, to get money from all of your contracts exactly like you did here. So simply repeat that, although at that point probably you'll have more contracts than before. So you get all of that money, you add it to the money that you may have saved. There are $15 for the player that completed the most contracts, $10 for the second player. Also, these resources here you can exchange again for money, completing the orders, whereas the sightings of the abominable dudes, they don't do anything during the game, but at the end of the game the player that has the most of those tokens gets a reward of $25. So you total all the money that you get from all of these sources, and at that point the richest player is the winner of the game. So the first time you look at the board, it looks great, and the components also look great. But then you look a little more up close and you start playing the game, and you realize that there are a couple of rough edges in the production of the game. The track for the value of the companies, for example, it goes all the way to 10. So it says that a company could have value of 10, but it can't. There simply aren't enough mines and cards and contracts and mine symbols on those cards to get any of the companies to 10. Maybe it's for a future expansion, but I don't know, it just seems strange. It's important in the game that the amount of money that you have is kept secret, and the rulebook says that, like, make sure other people don't know how much money you have. Very important, otherwise I know exactly how much to bid, and you lose that fun part of like wasting too much money, bidding too high to make sure that you get a certain card. But then the rulebook says, to prevent that, other players from knowing what you have, play by keeping the money in your hand under the table. Really? How annoying and uncomfortable it is to keep those cards there, fanning the money. The stuff is going to start falling on the floor as you play with only one hand, because because you're hiding the money. The game probably should have come with small screens. Many games do. Most games that have, secret pool of components that you had to keep from the other players. So it's strange to me that they didn't think about that, but they thought about that awesome, big, overproduced, abominable snowman. The rules are not long, but they come with a fairly extensive sheet of errata. And it's not an errata that has to do with typos or minor things. There are major procedures in the game, such as the fact that you keep your completed contracts, your completed orders, and you score them at the end. You get $15 if you're the player that has the most of those. That entire procedure is not in the rulebook at all. It's only in the errata. So that to me is suspicious. That makes me think of something that was figured out, was tried late during the play testing, and they didn't revise the rulebook. So when I look at these things, I become suspicious. And then as I play the game itself, I had the impression that, again, there are some elements that are not fully baked. I'm not going to say it's half-baked, but maybe 4/5 baked, 9/10 baked. There is just something that is not quite there. There are a couple of strange elements there. But before we get to those, I want to give you a sense of the things that I like. There are several things that I like very much about this game. The bidding process, while it may seem repetitive, we're going to do auctions 60 times. That element takes place in an environment of scarcity. Money is tight, and it gets tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter. So as you bid, you're going to see your money shrink. Tension is going to rise as you're trying to hedge your bets. You want to invest in a certain company. You want to build mines for a certain color because it's going to be cheap to build mines in the color that go in a certain direction where there are tokens that you want. But then at the same time, of course, other people are going to get a lot of other stuff. So if you hedge your bets too much is a problem. If you invest too much early on, then you're left without money, and that is a problem. So having to budget in this environment where you don't get much money, those orders are cute. It's fun to get $7 here and there, but they're not going to change much. You still have the sense that almost sense of tension or mounting tension as your money goes down. And of course, the best stuff comes out later. Maybe it doesn't, but it feels like it's so good once you can't have it. I like that element a lot. And I like the potential idea of the fact that not all companies will be worth the same. I'm trying to figure out which companies will be worth a lot at the end, which ones want to be worth much. If I see a company that is up and coming, you bought all of those mines and you have a lot of those contracts, so you're likely to build those mines, I'll wait for you to build all of those mines, and then maybe I'll buy a card that has a lot of contracts and doesn't have any mines. So I'm simply riding the momentum of your success and pretty much enjoying the fruits of your labor, which of course makes sense and is exciting if some companies will be worth a lot and some not much. I played a game maybe 2 months ago, Paris Connection, that has the same idea as a very simple Euro game. You're building tracks and you're also trying to figure out which companies will be worth a lot at the end. This element I liked a lot as I started playing the game. But at the end, we had a problem with that element that turned out to be absolutely underwhelming. The problem is that every time we played the game, we built virtually every mine, almost every mine. And maybe there was one company that didn't get 2 mines built, and so that company was worth $1 less, and all the other companies were worth as much as they could. We didn't have a case of companies that were almost entirely non-built, so they had a value of 3 or 4 or 2 or 3. Then there was a company that was 6 and 2 companies that were 8. That's probably too many companies, like 3, 4, 6, and 8. Well, then figuring out which company is which is going to be huge, and that to me is what I expected the game to be. I thought this game is going to be very, very good because it's going to have that element, but it didn't. But it didn't, because we had enough money to build all of the companies, and we had enough incentives to do so. Because if I get the cards and getting a card with a mine and a contract, then I want to build that. I can see potentially, you got a lot of cards in a certain company with a lot of contracts and not many mines. then no one has any money, so I'm able to buy very cheap a lot of cards of that company that have a lot of mines, not many contracts. And I have all of these mines that I got cheap. I don't have an incentive to build it, then I'm gonna keep them there, so I prevent your company from getting those, from getting the value from building them. So again, I see a case where you have all of the mines and, well, I have all of the mines and you have all of the contracts and I'm not building the mines, so your contracts are not worth much. I see how that could happen, but it doesn't happen all that much because, of course, if I bought the flipping mines, I want the contracts. If I bought the flipping contracts, I want the mines. So I'm going to invest a little bit more, and I'm likely going to have it. And then if you want to block me, maybe it's a time where you don't have much money. So in my experience is that every player, wisely enough, will get a mix of contracts and mines, so that you don't get obstructed because you have all the contracts somebody has as all the mines. And having all the mines is good because when you have the mines is also very valuable because you want to build them, because you want to get those contracts, because they will be worth at the end. So if I had the mines, most likely I will play them. The case that I described before, it's not likely to happen in my experience. I mean, you got all the contracts early on, and then I just have an amazing group of sets that I scored, and later on then I can get those mines out. But the way you're shuffling the cards, so the chances that this will happen are rare. This being said, I went online because I thought, are we doing something wrong? Maybe we are, but I went online and I saw the people that commented and they had the same experience, that during the game you build all of the companies, in which case the game becomes a little trivial. It simply becomes who has the most contracts. And really, if one company is $1 less valuable, then that really doesn't change much. The winner is the player that has the most contracts. And then that entire aspect of figuring out which companies are going to be worth, how much they're going to be worth, how you manipulate the market value is completely lost. So I saw several groups, several people saying that their group had the same problem. Other groups saying like, well, no, we didn't have that problem at all. Oh, there was such a variance. It was amazing. Good for them, unlucky for them. But maybe, what are we? Maybe we're savvy investors, which should be good in a game. The game should be more fun if you invest well. And maybe, again, if my group has a good balance between saving and investing. But then it just has turned out that then we have less fun because we know how to invest. I mean, the game will have that variance and fun if you make mistakes. That to me is not the hallmark of a great design. It almost feels like, yeah, if you play suboptimally, then it's going to get more exciting. But again, a great design, you play it optimally and it plays optimally, meaning the strategy is optimal and the enjoyment that you derive, the pleasure from playing the game is increased. That wasn't in my experience because unfortunately that element of stock market value was lost. It simply was a race to see who got the most contract because the value of all of them was the same at the end or virtually the same. And the fun part was, yes, actually to try to get those sets. Sometimes, well, I want to build a lot of mines of a certain color in a certain area to create a bottleneck because I know that you have a lot of red company cards and I build all the blue ones. So now if you want to build the red mine is going to be very far. So I force you to do that. That would be another way that maybe the red company doesn't get invested in much. But the fact that as you're building, the cost decreases, again, it means that you can do like a very long line. It's not going to be much more expensive than a short direction. So also this fact of obstructing certain lines to increase the cost of a mine is not very effective because the longer is the line of mines that you're creating to obstruct, the lower is the cost in each segment. And so again, that is not a strategy that changes the value of the mines, of the companies based on where they are in the net of connections. So again, I like that as a strategic aspect. That turned out to be pretty underwhelming because there was it really didn't matter. You didn't really block other people. So I like the bidding. I like the scarcity. I like the tension that comes from that. But I didn't like the fact that you could not really obstruct other players effectively. and again that the market value wasn't there. Another thing that I like very much, and now I'm not sure that in the long run I will like, is the profit card, that one-time thing that you do in the game, which is to cash in based on the contracts that you have at that time and the market value at that time. I would say that is interesting, yes, because mid-game there may be a company that is only worth 3 and another one is already worth 5. If you play the game a couple of times and you're playing optimally, you know that at the end they will all be worth 7 or 8. But in mid-game, then it can be interesting. That is an interesting moment that I'm trying to bump up the ones that I have, and then I'm gonna use the card then, and I'm gonna get a lot of cash. The point is that you have only 2 options. At that point, everybody else does the same. So everybody else, because most likely people are at that point mid-game, little past mid-game, they have very small piggy banks at that point. So all of a sudden I cash in like $35 and you have 5 and you have 7. I'm gonna win every contract. I'm simply gonna bid on everything just for the sake of it, because heck, it's better to have them than not to have them, especially if at the end they're gonna be worth more or less the same. So I'm gonna beat everybody on a lot of auctions. And if you wait too long, then you get your money, but at the point you won't be able to catch up. Because at that point you have 30, but I have still 15, so I'm not out of the game. I'm still going to be able to beat you a couple of times, and by that time the game is over. So there are only 2 options when a player plays the profit card and plays it well and cashes a lot. The option is that players do the same right away, so you have this annoying cascade effect, or they don't. So either you have the cascade effect in which you're kind of like forced to do that, and then the game becomes more interesting, but it's not, again, somehow it's not very exciting, the fact that I know I have to do it right away, or the players don't, and at that point pretty much the player that plays the profit card first and profits the most will win the game. Almost certainly. So again, and not necessarily the player that plays first. Sometimes I might get played this round and you played in 2 rounds, but I cashed in 30 and you cashed 50, then you're going to win the game. So it seemed to us that the player that plays the profit card best and gains the most, gains enough momentum that is very likely to win the game. And yes, if you're lucky, or if you invested a lot in getting those abominable snowman tokens, that may change things. But it almost feels like that one decision, I want it to be important, so it is interesting, but it almost feels like it's too important. It almost gives you the game. And if it is a decision that is halfway through the game that almost gives you the game, then of course that trivializes the value of the second half of the game. So I've been ranting about all the things that I didn't like very much, but in a certain sense, because there are many things that I like about the game, or I would say there's one thing that I like, which is the bidding process in an environment of scarcity. But to me, that is enough to make this game very interesting. But then around that thing, there are other things that seem wasted potential. If it was a game that was all bad, I would tell you so. But in a certain sense, part of what disappoints me here is precisely the game looks like it could be so much more. But there are just some, maybe an extra round of playtesting. Just some elements of design should be tweaked and fine-tuned to me, so that the profit card is important, but not too much, so the player could play optimally, and the value of the companies will still change, and will be so part of the game will be gauging the future value of the companies. That element, unfortunately, was completely lost on my group. Is not lost on other groups out there. Good for you. I'm glad you're enjoying the game. Please don't play like we did, because clearly you're gonna have more fun than we did. So I don't know what you're doing right and we're doing wrong, or vice versa. My impression is just we were careful at spending money, so we were building all that we wanted and could, and we built every mine out there. And to me, that is something that somewhat kills the game. So give it a try for yourself if you're curious about it. It's a game that to me is okay, not much more, but a game that, I don't know, I had the impression if just a game doctor comes around and heals the system, fixes it, reshapes it a little bit, it could be a very good game. Heck, maybe even a great game. I like bidding games. I like stock market games that are simple enough. that I can understand them, because it's funny, I like stock market games, but them are not smart enough to play the tough ones. But this was a stock market for dummies I get and I enjoy very much. So there are these things that I like, but the overall, when you put together these ingredients that I like very much, the final product in this case is not one that I found particularly compelling. It had all the problems that I explained. It seems other groups are not encountering those problems. If you try the game, I hope you are a member of the groups that enjoys the game. In my group, it was pretty much an underwhelming experience, and it really felt like the game had something not fully developed, and in general, it felt like a missed opportunity.